Oh, we are snowed in, ladies and gentlemen. So let's go ahead, fire this sucker up. And it looks like we're gonna have to dig ourselves out a little bit because it is completely snowed in. It's that time of the year. We didn't really get snow all through Christmas, didn't really feel like Christmas. And now that it should be leading into springtime, of course, we're getting freaking snow. Anyways, let's go dig this thing out. Let's head on to the shop because we have some, I guess, maintenance today. But along the lines of us redoing the suspension, this maintenance is really gonna help the steering feel. So let's go check out what we're doing today. Made her to the shop, chuck this sucker in park. It's time to get some work done. We actually, once again, are getting kind of a late start to the day, but that ain't gonna stop us. We have some adjustments to do that is gonna help our handling, and everything is gonna be great. Let's get out of here. Just like that, we are ready to go. My bag is heavy today. I got a lot of stuff in there, but the Civic, the #1, this is what we're talking about today. Here she is once again, boys, and today we're actually gonna go ahead and do some more things with the overall suspension and feeling of this car. Today I'm gonna go ahead and adjust my power steering rack. Now, it doesn't usually have to be done all that much, but God only knows this was only done once back in 1994, and there is a little bit of slop in the wheel. So super easy. There's a big lock nut. I have the Honda tool. Break that loose. Run the tightening nut all the way down. It's like 3 foot-pounds or 20 degrees. Lock off the lock nut, see how the steering feels, and kind of go from there. It's more of a test and trial situation. You kind of just keep going back and forth until the steering feels right to you. There's really no right or wrong way to do this. It's just a lash adjustment in between gears. So whatever feels right, good for you guys. I am going to have to tighten it a fair bit. I already know that because it's not terrible. It's not dangerous by any means, but when you're sitting, since this car used to be power steering and now it is a manual, we do that to get more feel for the road and there's more engagement when driving. You don't have that kind of intermediary of a power assist, right? You get the full feeling of driving this car. We have the Momo thick and 330mm wheel on it, so it's a little bit tighter, a little bit thicker, and the steering feel is great. But when you're dead stopped and you're sitting there, you got about, I'd say about a ½ an inch of kind of just wiggle room in the steering wheel before the wheels actually move at all. So that's just due to lash. I mean, this thing's over 30 years old, and for all I know, it's probably never been done. So we're gonna go ahead and do that today. And for this particular job, you're going to really just need 2 tools that pretty much everyone should have, especially if you're working on your own car. Doesn't have to be a ratcheting wrench, but you want a 14mm wrench. And then you need this fancy tool from Honda. I mean, you don't have to. I went ahead and bought it because Lord only knows we're gonna have a lot of Honda projects on the car, and I think this is quite a universal tool for most Hondas. From what I've seen from trying to research and locate this tool, it seems to be a discontinued part. So if you guys are curious and want the part number, there it is right there. I actually ended up finding this one brand new in bag on eBay. The dealership couldn't even get it. So that's what you're gonna need. Like I said, you don't have to use this, but this is what's gonna get that big lock nut loose. Basically, it's gonna be really hard for me to go under there and show you guys, but you have a big flat lock nut, and in the middle is a 14mm nut. You back the lock nut off, you take the 14mm, you kind of just back it off a little bit, take the lash out of it, and then you run it all the way down. And there's 2 different ways I see it online from what I can read between EG, EK, EF, is that you run it down and you tighten it to 3 foot-pounds or 20 degrees past, technically, finger tight, bottomed out. And then the other half that I see is you run it down and then you back it off 20 degrees. So I'm gonna start by kind of bottoming it out and just really tightening it with my fingers, because 3 foot-pounds is nothing at all. So I'm kind of just gonna bottom it out with my fingers, tighten the lock nut, see what the play is like. Since the car is not running, it is manual steering, I should be able to tell the steering wheel slop with it just up in the air like this. If I can't, obviously I'll lower it back on the ground and see if that's good. But I'm gonna start by tightening the nut by finger, locking the lock nut, and we're gonna test and kind of play with it from there. May only have to do it once and nail it first try, good to go. May have to crawl under there 3-4 times and see what we're working with. But 2 tools for the job, super simple. From taking our traction bar off last week, the car has been on jacks ever since, so easy peasy. Let's go ahead and get this done. I bought that tool over a year ago now, and I still haven't done it. It's long overdue. It's one of those things that's just not fun. It's kind of a chore, and that's probably why I've been putting it off. But chores also need to get done, so let's go ahead and get this done. And just to show you guys what I mean, right there, the wheels don't move. So I have a little bit of a play, and I'm hoping I can fix that by just adjusting the rack. Wheels are dead straight, make sure everything's straight, but just wanted to show you guys that before we get too far into this. All right, let's crawl under here. And my freaking camera light is dead, but if we can see right there, I'll circle it in editing after the fact, but that is what you're looking for. And I don't know how well you can see it, but you see that nut sticking off the top of it? That's the adjustment, and the big nut on the outside is the lock nut. Mine is a little bit greasy, so I'm gonna go ahead and soak this down with some brake clean, and we're gonna get the tools in here and see what we can do. All right, boys, let's crawl our big butts under here and let's take a look. That is indeed a 14. Uh-oh. Definitely don't want to round this puppy out. Come on. This wrench does not like to go on here very nice. Lock nut is loose. Let's get a wrench on here. Actually, I'm going to swap this out for a line wrench, I think. I did kind of want to get a non-swivel and non-ratchet wrench for this, but I only have 12 and 13 and 15 millimeter wrenches that aren't like this, so I'm stuck to using this, but that's okay. So that's loose, so let's tighten this sucker. Oh geez, it was very loose. On good. See, that's the problem. This has come so loose that I can't get it up there and get it to stay, so I'm just ripping the open end of it. But you have such limited space to turn the wrench that it's kind of a bummer. Gotta back this lock nut off more, get that nice and loose. This thing is still tightening, so either I had a severely loose rack or I don't really know. It like still hasn't bottomed out. That's kind of crazy. It feels very gummy. It's not just like loose, like a loose nut that you can run down. It's like whether I loosen it or tighten it, it feels very like gummy, which I find quite weird. And this open end barely catches enough to like get like an 1/8 of a turn at a time.
2,000 years later.
All right, well, I've adjusted it. I'm gonna close it up for the time being, and I'm gonna go test the steering wheel again. I just wanna make sure this is tight when I test it. Otherwise, we could be in for some bad news. All right, let's go test the steering. Moment of truth. One adjustment down. Let's see if it really did anything. Oh wow, that did a lot actually. Now I've only got like that in my wheel, and as you can see, I'm barely moving the wheel. That feels really good, except there is that little bit, just the tiniest bit. So take note of where the wheel's at. Let's look back at this, and I'm gonna turn it as little as possible until the tire moves. And that's how much I had to turn it. I went probably like that. So It does already feel a lot better. Like a lot better. But I think we can do just a smidge better. So I like that. That's a huge improvement. Before we had like a good 1/2 inch to 1 inch of play, and now that's gone to like an 1/8 inch, if not less. So that's good. We are on the right track. But I feel like I shouldn't call it quits just yet. Just yet. We're so close. Feel like one more adjustment is gonna be the ticket, but I gotta make sure my wheels are straight because they're not. All right, so I am really pleased with the outcome so far. As you guys seen, steering wheel feels dialed now. The one problem I'm having an issue with, this tool that breaks the lock nut loose, easy enough. I wish I almost had a different ratchet. Like I said, I have these swivel ones with the ratchet, and that's the only one I have in 14 mil. The problem is when I get up there, it falls over, and it's such a tight space that my finger is even too fat to hold it up like that. And I did get it on it once, and I went like 1/4 of a turn, and it just fell down. So I wish I didn't have like the swivel ones. I should have a 14 millimeter regular wrench, but I can only find a 12, 13, and 15. Of course, the one I need is the one I can't find, so I'm stuck to using this, and it's a bit of a pain because when you get the open end in there, I have about 1/8 of a turn, got to rotate the wrench 1/8 of a turn, and it's just kind of a pain in the butt. But the nut, the actual lash nut that you're turning with this wrench is like a very gummy. When you loosen it or tighten it, it has like the same amount of restriction on it. I kind of thought it would be like a regular nut. For instance, your oil pan. When it's loose, you can spin it by finger forward or back until it bottoms out, and then you kind of cinch it down once it's bottomed out. I thought this would be like that, and I would just loosely run it all the way down and then just give it the slightest snug up, but it's not the case. It's really hard to tell when it's bottomed out or when I'm crushing it, because whether I back it off or tighten it, it just has that gummy feeling, as if you put like thread sealant on a bolt and you're unthreading it and you're like, this should be easy enough to do by finger, but it's still like that gummy kind of stuck-ish feeling. That's what I'm working around. So for me, with that on an open end of a wrench, is really hard to tell when I've actually bottomed it out. But considering there's a slightest bit of play in the steering wheel still, I don't think it is fully bottomed out. So I'm going to crack the lock nut loose once more, and I'm just going to try and see how much I can really run this down before I'm like, okay, that's too tight. And then we're going to reevaluate. But from where we started today till now, big ups. I'm going to stop talking, adjust this one more time, and we're going to see how we're looking. Okay, I think I finally figured out where this thing bottoms out. If my lock nut is loose, which it is, this thing is fully bottomed out now, like 100%. So I'm gonna loosen it just the slightest bit. You can definitely feel when it bottoms out. Yes, it's kind of gummy and tight feeling backing it out or snugging it down, but when it bottoms out, it's like a regular nut. It is 100% bottomed out. So I just bottomed it out and loosened it about 1/4 of a turn, because our first adjustment was looser than that. I probably had to turn the nut about another 1/2 to 3/4 of a turn for it to bottom out. So we definitely weren't in spec with the last one, although it was feeling good. But I just want to make sure we're 100% dialed, because as we can see, it's a little tight. It sucks being under the car. I don't want to have to do this again, you know what I mean? One and done, do it right the first time. All right, lock nut is snug back up. Once again, let's do our second test of the steering wheel. I really think this is gonna be it. Fingers crossed. All right, moment of truth. Oh my God. Oh my God. There is zero play. Look at that wheel move, boys. I wish you could kind of see my hand move and the wheel. Maybe if I hold it like this. And you can just tell by the wheel, like, there is no play. As soon as you go to move it, there's an input. We're dialed. I'm gonna crawl my big ass back under there. We're gonna tighten that thing up, solidify the deal. We're freaking set. I thought this was gonna take a lot longer than it was. Every one of those jobs, you know, you got probably $10,000 worth of freaking tools, and then you'll run into those jobs where you'll need a specialty tool. And it's kind of that fact of needing a specialty tool that you're like, shit, this job is gonna suck. But I will say, the worst part about that is the limited room and the fact that I couldn't use the box end of the wrench because it just flopped out of the way. If I did have that, it'd be a lot easier for one, but really the only hardest thing about that is the limited space. Hardness level, I'd say that job's probably like a 1 or 2 out of 10. That is pretty freaking simple. And the amount of steering input that I'm gonna gain with that, paired with what we said in last week's video with the whole new K-tuned suspension, ditching the traction bar, getting sway bars, strut bars, X-bar, this thing's gonna handle like a weapon. Now that we have no steering slop with all this refresh suspension, no more traction bar, come on now, this is gonna be unbelievable. Anyways, I'm gonna go ahead, crawl into here, we're gonna tighten this thing up, we're gonna drop this thing on the ground, and we're gonna feel this steering, boys. There's no more traction bar here. I can actually comfortably jack up my car now. Before, the traction bar was right butted up against the little metal piece where you jack on the core support. So my jack circle couldn't fully get under it, and it was always a bit sketchy. Now that it's not there, brother, we are freaking dialed. Another plus for removing the traction bar. Oh man, my jack has a mile of clearance now that the traction bar is gone. I could never have slid my jack under the car that far with the traction bar there. But our V-band is the lowest point of the car. So maybe I should jack it up, and instead of having the bolt on the bottom, put the bolt on the top so it's not as low hanging. But who gives a crap? I wanna feel how the steering is on this thing with the car on the ground. I'm bloody excited. Genuine question, do any of you guys get shocked when your car's been up in the air so long and you finally put it down? Because for the last 2 weeks, this thing has been up in the air, and this thing seems like a freaking go-kart. It's so low to the ground now. My kneecaps are above the core support. Well, I can't even stand up straight and put my hand on the engine. This thing is so bloody low. That is hilarious. Oh, it gets me every time it's on jacks and then I finally dump it back down. I love this thing. But now that it's on the ground, let's get in here. Oh, boys, does it ever feel good to be back in this thing right now. I love this car. The Recaros hug your back perfectly. Yeah, see, now that it's on the ground though, it definitely rocks more again. It felt a lot better in the air. I'm thinking maybe is my steering U-joint. You guys can let me know in the comments below, but you hear that clunk? It kind of sounds like it's in the dash where my steering U-joint is. It's a very faint bit. And I mean, this is manual steering and it's such a small car. It's not even that bad. I'm just flat spinning it on the ground, but damn it. Why did it feel so good in the air? The weird thing is it took probably 2 full turns to get bottomed out from where it was. So it definitely, we did tighten it, even though it's not fully tight. We did tighten it, but the problem is that this is the exact same amount of play, feel, and sound that I got before we did any adjustment at all. As much as I don't want to do this, I'm going to jack this freaking thing back up in the air, put it on jack stands, crawl back under there, and I've done the one Honda form to tighten it all the way down and then back it off a quarter turn and tighten the lock nut. That's where we're at right now. I'm going to try the other Honda form that says tighten it all the way down and then give it about just under a quarter turn. About 3 foot-pounds are the equivalent of 20 degrees of a turn past bottom out, and then tighten up the lock nut. We're gonna drop it back down and test it out then. So I'm gonna stop yapping. I'm gonna put my tunes on, put you guys on a time lapse. We're gonna do that because it felt so good and tight in the air, and now it just doesn't. So boys, maybe this is the U-joint. I'm still gonna jack it up and try and like fully tighten it and then kind of run it just like that, so it's even a little bit more tight than this. But as I'm rocking it back and forth, she is telling me that as I'm doing that, even though it doesn't feel like I'm turning the wheels and it kind of feels like dead play, the wheels are going back and forth very minutely, but they are. God, I hope I don't have to do a freaking U-joint, man. I would rather wire an entire car than do U-joints, man. The freaking worst snap ring fucking... Oh, I hate U-joints. We're gonna readjust this. I really hope it's not a U-joint. That sucks. It's in the worst spot ever too. I'd rather take the engine out and just make my life easier, to be honest. All right, guys, well, that is not the move either. Now I've got too tight. The steering wheel feels like it's like grinding or gritty almost. So I'm gonna go back it off a little bit. It's still gonna be a little tighter than when we just left it off, and should be good. All right, I think I've got it absolutely dialed. It's really good. It's just when you get to full lock, there's a little bit more tension, but it's the slightest bit. Like I went all the way down. It was too tight. The steering wheel feels very gritty. I backed it off probably about an 1/8 turn, still felt gritty. Backed it off another 1/8 turn, and now it's feeling good. It gets a little bit tighter, like hardly noticeable at full lock, but I think it's gonna be good set right there. We're gonna leave it, we're gonna test it on the road. I can't do it right now because as you've seen by the F-150, it's snowy as heck. So we're gonna consciously remember to check that on the first drive. And if it's still a little bindy and weird, I'll come back and back it off even more. But I think we're next to perfect now. Considering the V-band is the lowest point, I'm gonna crawl down there with you guys and we're gonna rotate that because I don't like that. I don't like that at all. And I'll show you guys, it's already been smashed up a few times. Oops. All right, so as we can see, our lovely V-band here, it is quite bent. And I mean quite bent. So I am going to take this part and try to get it probably on this side so that this threaded portion is right here and it's going up and down. And then we'll have a little bit more clearance because as you can tell, it's a lot skinnier where the bulkiness of tightening and loosening it is. So we're gonna take this, loosen it, skirt it back to over here. We should get more clearance. All right, boys, and now that I'm still sitting here on the ground, V-band is moved so it's not the lowest point anymore at all. Check out how much room we got with that. Sick. It's basically not much thicker than the pipe now because it doesn't have the bulkiness of that sticking on the bottom, so that is wicked. Give us some more ground clearance now that we've added a ton of ground clearance since the traction bar leaving. But as you can see now, the dump pipe is definitely the lowest point, even a little bit lower than the oil pan. But let's be honest, would you rather smoke your oil pan or your downpipe? I know what my answer is, and it's definitely not a freaking oil pan. That's a pain in the butt. But now that this is all done, let's drop this car down once more. Hopefully it's the last time we have to drop it down. Test the steering when it's on the ground. Check the clearance with that V-band mounted differently now that it's on the ground. And fingers crossed for only good things, boys. Boys, I'm happy to report, freaking thing is dialed. Thank goodness. Car's not gonna have to go back up in the air today. We're dialed on that part. Let's check out the clearance we gained from rotating this V-band out of the way and see if it was minimal or see if it was worth it. All right, let's see. A little bit dark, that's okay. I've got light. Boom. Check out that ground clearance. Not bad if you ask me. I definitely don't think that V-band's gonna be too much of an issue anymore. But if we do hit something, clearly looks like it's gonna be the downpipe. But what do you do about that? It's a 3-inch pipe. Can't really go much closer to the oil pan. Is what it is. And like I said before, I would rather hit my downpipe and cave that thing in than my oil pan any day of any week. Forever. Hitting an oil pan would be the worst case scenario. But I'm gonna go ahead, clean up the shop now. Steering rack is adjusted. That's how you do it. As you can see from my case, it probably is gonna take you a couple shots to get it perfectly dialed, but it's worth it. Don't just do it once and say, good enough. Adjust it till you know it's dialed, and you'll know that for sure when the car is on the ground, because we thought we had it dialed pretty well first shot when the car was in the air. As soon as we put it on the ground, bit of a different story. Now, there still is some slop, and I think I'm gonna have to put a new U-joint in the steering column itself, but rack is adjusted a lot better, and there's a lot more steering input from initially turning the wheel from basically 0 degrees. So that's awesome. All I could ask for. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, comment, like, subscribe, follow me on the TikTok, the Instagram, and everything in between. It's all at Brash Garage. Links are in the description and in the channel bio. Also, go ahead, check out my Amazon store. Some good bits on there for you guys, your shop tools and things like that you see me use pretty much, well, every time we're at the shop. So like I said, guys, if you enjoyed the video, comment, like, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.